hear politicians on the campaign trail, you'd believe that caste and religious identities and an aggressive nationalism is what Indian voters care about most. Well, a host of civil society groups certainly don't think so, and they've put forward a people's agenda, or Jan Sarokar, for the Lok Sabha elections of 2019. To find out what is on this agenda and also to get at the substantive issues the new government will have to tackle if every Indian has to be pulled out of poverty and if we are to become a more just and equal society. I am talking on Off Center today to Aruna Roy of the Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan. Aruna, thank you for making time. If I were to ask you to compare what we are hearing and reporting in the media of what the politicians are putting out on the campaign trail and what the people's agenda is putting forward, would you say it's an unbridgeable chasm?
I would say it's certainly a sense of focus, because I think the large majority of people who live in rural India are not really concerned about the temple, nor are they even concerned about security. Their real issues are how will they be concerned about security when their security of life, of employment, of health is not guaranteed. So it's primarily they're concerned with the complete indifference to these issues that has existed in the last 4.5 years. All the programs that have been touted have not really been new programs. They've been extension of older ideas, which have in fact many of them had seminal fundamental problems, and that's why they failed in the past. And it has nothing to do with which party is in power. It's a question of how you plan a program, and these were they were ill-planned programs which were taken up.
So when we look at the charge sheet against the incumbent government, and then you look at the demands that you need from the next government, would you say jobs and economic distress is the overarching starting point, cutting across communities, cutting across regions?
I would think it's fundamental, because you see, economic distress is the beginning of guarantee of life, because without addressing the economic issues of employment, and how would you ever guarantee that a person will be able to continue with life itself? So it is fundamental to it. And I think one of the biggest problems has been that promised jobs have not come. On the one hand, we talk about higher education, we talk about technology, and the other hand, we are closing all doors, and when people started those small little startups, you bring in demonetization. Demonetization closes massively all the small industries and all the various things that were happening at that rate. So you are really bringing in a vicious cycle of closing doors rapidly. You show them one door, they run there and you shut the door. Then they run somewhere else and you shut the door. So first generation literate people, first generation aspirations of people are all really being, and to divert from this, you're showing the victimization of a particular community, like either be Muslims or Christians or whoever, that they are responsible for your distress. You're saying you're building on a religious agenda, which is not even religion. It's a distortion of religion, because most of us, I don't think all of us Hindus believe that we should be Hindutva. So I would say that today, in rural distress and in this charge sheet that we have framed, it is employment, it is food security, it is access to health, it's access to education. They're all there.
I'm curious about the role of the NREGS in the last 5 years, because on the one hand, we read about budget allocations going up, 60,000 crore rupees in the interim budget, 55,000 in the year before that. And on the other hand, you have reports saying from the ground that people are not getting the full 100 days, wages are not coming in on time. So what exactly is happening where NREGS employment is concerned?
See, when the Prime Minister came to Parliament in the first session, he said he'll keep it alive as a monumental failure of the UPA.
Yeah. So do you feel vindicated somewhere that that the investment in it has gone up?
No, let me just tell you. Karnataka alone has 2,000 crores pending for unemployment, employment, delayed employment payments. 2,000 crores. If you add up all the states, whatever seems like an increase in the national allocation will go down to less than what it was many years ago. because you're really covering up your debt. Because what is the debt? The debt is unpaid wages to millions and thousands of workers. So if you take that as an indicator, you will realize that allocation is not increased at all. In net terms, it is not increased. It has gone down. Secondly, if you take the figures of Rajasthan, it explains why the previous government had no political intent to let NREGA, MJ-NREGA survive. So it's by omission, which they said. Pai also said in an interview with me that they will do it by omission, not by commission. So what do when there is a demand for work? They don't register it. Slowly people keep demanding, they have to survive. So they go elsewhere. Then you say there is no demand. So in the 8 months of the NDA rule, they gave roughly 16 crore person days of work. And the UPA, which is, the Congress which has now come since then, since December, in the remaining part of that financial year, has given 13.5 crore person days. So they have actually increased it manifold because there was no political intent where the BJP was concerned to step up NREGA. Whereas this UPA, the Congress government has been pressured. We pressure everyone. So it's been under pressure and it's also responded. So in this 13.5 crore person days, there's been a phenomenal increase, and there's also been 13 lakh new job cards made. People won't make job cards if they don't want employment. So in this entire NREGA, the intent of government and the intent of the bureaucracy to support this program is extremely important.
What I find interesting is that in the last few years, the conversation about inequality and therefore poverty have become sort of front and center. Do you feel there's a paradigm shift in the way this conversation is playing out today?
Let me say that there are two parallel conversations in this country. One, of course, talks about the non-existence of poverty, which doesn't even want to acknowledge that there is poverty and wants to talk about the glamorous issues. Some of them tinsel, some of them substantive. On the other side, you have the other discourse, which is totally centered in the Constitution, the guarantee of basic rights, which includes right to freedom of expression, right to life, right to this, right to that, a whole series of rights, and takes its cue from the directive principles of state policy and thinks that India should continue to be a welfare state. The notion of a welfare state is not a socialist state, and there's some complete confusion in the minds of our young people that actually Fabian socialism, which came to England long ago and which was the basis for which the London School of Economics was born, is where they think that in a situation where there is inequality, the state has to take responsibility for removing that inequality. And because very many different kinds of governments came, there was not only Congress, there were non-Congress governments as well, but they were unable to deal with poverty. The rights-based legislations actually said, hand over the right to the individual who's supposed to receive the service, so that that individual can raise a voice or protest. So all these rights-based legislations is real democracy. It's handing over the rights of sovereignty to people so that they themselves exercise that sovereignty within a legal frame. So you're not talking about violence, you're not talking about killing, you're not even talking about removing the government, you're talking about improving the government, but with people's participation. So you had social audit, you had so many wonderful concept. Social audit, which came out of the Right to Information campaign, is now a worldwide concept. So if you look at it, it's a creative discourse between the people and formal power to say, look, if you are there because of me, because I vote you into power, you will have to deliver. And that's a reasonable discourse. This discourse has been suppressed because people who amplify this have also been put to jail, have been incarcerated, have been attacked, including RTI users and so many others, artists, people who have used expression. But this cannot be put down where poverty is concerned. The poor continue to live in a reality where they have to address these issues. So that discourse continues to live. And I think that discourse is in one sense, the primary democratic discourse.
In the context of the manifestos, when you look at the Congress, Nyunatam Aay Yojana, which is the centerpiece of their offering, when you look at, even if it is only for farmers at this point of time, the PM Kisan Yojana, which was launched in December with retrospective effect, are these initiatives of income support, are these, how do you assess them?
Even though the Congress manifesto says that it will give this 6,000 rupees
a month,
we have further questions. See, the rights-based legislations were evolved with people. So if Congress envisages giving 6,000 rupees per family per month or per unit per month or whatever, we would like to know what are the modalities of it. You can't just do a cash transfer. A cash transfer to people who are unable to work or unable to live, which is like a dole, is different from transferring money to an able-bodied person. You can't just give money without some return. So NREGA was that kind of concept. I'm not saying that it's the only way, but it established that you could really transfer income with creating assets, with creating some kind of infrastructure, with the dignity of the individual.
But if you were to get the cash, wouldn't you have the dignity of choice?
You don't, normally.
Why
it
is
all
that?
Depends on many factors. Cash is a dole. NREGA is a legislated act by Parliament. As an idea, as a concept, it's not unwelcome, but it will have to be fleshed out, and it will have to take into consideration the MGNREGA, it will have to take into consideration food security, it will have to take into consideration many other factors, because it cannot set them all aside and become the main thing, because those are legislated laws and we need those laws, because governments come and go. The laws remain forever.
If something like this, minimum income support or the universal basic income, even if it is not universal but targeted towards the poor, you are not in favor of this direct cash transfer in this
let's take the issue of
form.
Targeting. I've gone blue in the face fighting targeting, because who decides who will be targeted? What is the integrity of the person deciding who will be targeted? The nature of the work decides the targeting. For instance, you can target a pension because you decide on an age,
right?
Or a kind of individual. But in terms of work, if you have priority, whom are you going to give it to? We have had riots in Rajasthan before MGNREGA came, and roadblocks all through summer. Roads would be blocked because you would have 300 people wanting to work to survive, and you would have 20 jobs. So we said, stop targeting, let that be self-targeting. So they are universal. Do you think I'll go and dig a trench? I won't dig a trench. Anyone who has access to a slightly better life will not go and stand in the heat of April, May and June to dig trenches and dig fields and dig ponds and whatever it is that MGNREGA does. So universalization is an issue we've been talking about. Make it universal, but the conditionality of the work itself becomes a limit.
At the risk of simplifying what you're saying, you are not in favor of direct cash transfers?
I'm not in favor of direct cash transfers as a only and main solution. It can be used for old age pensions, it can be used for scholarships for young people, no problem. Where it's a clear targeting, but here you can't. So you have to leave the choice to the people. So that you have to have universalization. When you leave choice to the people, it has to be within a framework. And that framework should be a legal framework. So that's why the old rights-based legislations will have to be used by this new concept for that money to be channelized rightly and for people to keep an eye on the transfer. Because built into all these various programs is the right to information, the right to transparency, and the notion of accountability. So only the Congress manifesto talks about accountability. The BJP manifesto is silent. But we need accountability, the new set of laws that we are working towards. The best learning from the MGNREGA was that it also led you to be a better citizen, led you to understand your own, because you framed your own plans, you did your own things. This my baap attitude of a dole from top is anti-democratic for me. anything that comes must be done with the people so that they understand what's happening, and they also need a period of activity which goes beyond the 5 years of a voted government. So they need something more than just the wishes of a well-wisher or of a hopeful program. Nor can any of the programs that have been planned and implemented by the present government without any thought to the details ever succeed. That's why in all my years as an activist outside with people, I've understood that the best program is designed by the user. The user has to design the program, and it goes.
Given your view on these direct cash transfers being a dole, when people say that, oh, you know, why we are against it is because people will not want NREGS work, or people won't want to work at all. How do you react to that reaction?
I don't think that people will not go to work, because it will be an additional income.
Yeah.
Look at us. Do you think we are all not working on multiple levels to create more money? And prices are going up.
So it's a very fallacious argument, isn't it?
I think it is not a completely logical argument. If I had 4 children and I had 2 above 18 and I was there and my husband was there, and you know, we would look at what we could do. So some would go here, some would go there. Even today, the more able-bodied person goes on work in the labor market, because it's tough work. And then so the less able-bodied person comes to MG-NREGA, or the woman comes to MG-NREGA. So she doesn't want to go far looking for work. The man goes. So there's a double income even today, because he can't live without it.
Yeah, and how can you live with 72,000 rupees a year in any case? Is that a fair question?
It is a 6,000
What
rupees.
is the poverty level we are talking about? What is poverty? What is being poor?
That is a big question today in India, which zooms in on us. How do you define poverty? Today, look at the anomaly. You give free housing and you insist on a toilet. So as soon as you have a toilet, you're scratched off the poverty list. These are the anomalies of today's decision-making process. So actually, I miss the Planning Commission and its open system, where many studies used to be done and put in front of us. We argued and disagreed with them. But there was a transparent mode of collecting data. We could see the process of collection of data and also critique it. Today, everything is done totally opaquely. We don't know what. And the data collection process has also been critiqued by many friends of mine who feel that that process itself is wrong.
You always make the case for democratic processes. In fact, I remember in a previous conversation you told me, and it's like burnt in my brain, in a democracy, nobody's boss. And you have to keep formulating and reformulating your arguments till you get to a certain collectively accepted outcome. In fact, in your book, you've written, you need to take people along, multiple stakeholders whose rights cannot be set aside. Among the campaigners, there's every possibility of different priorities and perspectives, even in what seems to be an issue of consensus. This is something you wrote in the context of the RTI Act and that campaign. In India in 2019, this democratic process that you are so passionate about and you consistently make the case for, do you see that being completely diminished, diluted, devalued?
I think every single platform for consultation, for dialogue has disappeared. In fact, Jantar Mantar disappeared. Even MKSS had gone to court to get the place back. So if you disallow dialogue and you suppress dissent and you talk about anyone who talks against an idea you have as an anti-national, then you're closing doors to democratic processes. The NRC, what is it? Why do people have to prove that they are citizens, and how can the president of a national party come out with a statement saying that apart from Hindus, Buddhists and Sikhs, all are infiltrators? The first Christian landed on the coast of Kerala was Saint Thomas, Jesus' disciple. And the first Muslims were converted in Kerala not because of any sword, but because of trade. So in a religion that was so open-ended and still survived after all these assaults to be 85%, we are bringing in this narrow-mindedness and arguing this kind of thing through. I think the huge possibilities of a democratic India, which seem to awaken with all these rights-based laws and all of that, has heavily diminished in the formal political debate. but it cannot be taken out of the roots. So we are all there talking about it. So that's where the real heart of democracy lies today, is not in powerful politicians, but in a powerful people. Because if you concentrate, or if I concentrate power in one individual, then we may as well go back to, in history, to previous systems of governance. Democracy actually allows you at every step to be a part of the process. And that unfortunately has not been so.
At the Jan Sarokar rally in Delhi, early April, we saw the Congress party represented by Sonia Gandhi, we saw the DMK, we saw AAP, we saw the CPI, the CPIM, NCP, RJD. I think messages came, the leaders were there. We did not see the BJP. Does that mean that this wide network of civil society groups that you're part of, that you endorse everybody else but the BJP? How does one understand this?
Because it's been...
Because you're critical of every party when they don't deliver.
Yes. We are saying for 2-3 reasons. One is that this party did not enter into a fair, uniform and inclusive debate. It chose people, but it was very exclusive debate. It brought in, as a subset of dialogues, which it never stopped, the Hindutva dialogue, where the state should have intervened to stop it. And I know as an ex-IAS officer that if the state intervenes and stops violence, nothing happens. But it did not intervene. So wherever it was, violence was allowed to continue, victims were made into the accused, and the kind of fear psychosis that it has produced, not only, mind you, amongst the minorities, but also amongst us who are non-conformist Hindus, who don't want to conform to their Hindutva paradigm. So in that sense, they have alienated a large number of people who would not want to dialogue with them today because of their economic policy, their social policy and their political positions. So when there are suggestions that constitution will be changed, even in their manifesto they are saying that they are going to change article so and so and so and so, then on whose mandate? Just their own party or just a handful of people? When if they amend those articles, it is one step closer to a concept of a Hindu Rashtra. The constitution was burnt in Jantar Mantar and no case of sedition was filed on the people who burnt the constitution. But people who amplified the voice of the poor were called anti-nationals. So there are messages clear for everybody. And so how can one endorse a party that has not accepted dissent, disagreement and dialogue? A party which has seen everyone who doesn't agree with them as the enemy. How can you endorse it? It's impossible now to look forward to a continuation of the present system, where we have been seen almost as non-citizens, almost as non-persons, threatened all the time with ways in which we would be seen as seditious, as anti-government, anti the state. And by the way, the state and the government are two separate things. It's not the same.
They're definitely not the party, which is all these lines have got blurred in the last 5 years, isn't
exactly.
it?
The government is a government. We elect it and we put it out. It can be Indira Gandhi, it can be Modi. We can elect them to power and ask them to go home, you know. But the state is our state. So how can I be called anti-state if I am anti a political party?
Aruna, thank you for being as eloquent and impassioned as ever. Wish you a lot of good luck.
Thank you.
But you've got to leave us with a piece of music that you could play on a loop.
Well, Akla Chalo Re, because today we are afraid. So it says, and it talks about fear. So for me, every Indian must act on their conscience today. And that conscience says go, we must go. What are we afraid of? So that song, which was composed for Gandhiji's Salt March by Ravindranath Tagore, is an all-time favorite.
Aruna Roy, thank you.
Thank you very much.